Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM, The Joe Miller Show. We're honored to have with us Pastor Rafael Cruz, father of Senator Ted Cruz, raised in communist Cuba, established basically what freedom means when he got to the United States, understood it because he was under a lack of freedom and persecution in Cuba. And Pastor Cruz, I want to welcome you to the show.
Joe, it's so great to be with you, man. You're a true patriot and a man that is trying to fight to restore freedom in America. I wish you the very, very best. I really admire you for your persistence and your fight, and you're a true American, a true patriot.
Well, Pastor Cruz, nothing compared to you and what you're doing right now, going throughout the country, alerting the country to the loss of freedom, the need for people to stand. One of the things that we've talked about on this show is an increasing loss of religious freedom in this country. We've, of course, heard about the bakery that wanted to take a stand for traditional marriage, flower shop, same thing, getting shut down effectively for taking a stand, taking real financial consequence, others trying to speak out. I compare today the country to what it was when I was in high school, back in the 1980s. In the country, in some respects, with respect to free speech, with respect to free exercise, doesn't really even seem to measure up to where we were. And then you look back,
not.
And you look back now, clear back to the beginning of the country and the type of stand that our founders took, particularly pastors, and the stands that they took. And it just seems like we're leaderless today. Where are the pastors?
Well, Joe, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, there are 17 grievances against King George listed on the Declaration of Independence. What people are not aware of is that every one of those 17 grievances were preached in the churches of America before they were written on the Declaration. It was pastors calling out King George for the atrocities that the British were perpetrating against the American people. And yes, the question is, where are those pastors today? You know where they are, Joe? They are hiding behind their pulpits. They're scared to death of losing their tax exemption. They're scared to death of not being politically correct. They're scared to death of people being offended, leaving the church, and consequently income leaving the church. And all of those are not really putting the priorities on pleasing God rather than pleasing men.
So what do we need to do to motivate them to take a different approach?
Well, I think they need to realize that pastors are largely responsible for what's happening in America. Joe, about 2 years ago, I came across a statistic that really burdened my heart. And the statistic said that in the United States of America, there were approximately 89 million evangelical Christians. That of those, only 50% were registered to vote. And that of the 50% that were registered to vote, only 50% voted in 2012. That means 3 out of 4 stayed home. Since then, I have talked to a couple of Catholic bishops that tell me the percentages are the same in the Catholic Church. So if 75% of the Christians that are staying at home, it is our fault what's happening in America today.
One of the things that shocks me is that as we continue to lose these freedoms, that the church is not pushing back, because it seems this is a direct impact, at least on genuine Christianity. If you're going to be limited in your speech regarding, and you look at, for example, Canada. I mean, some pastors in Canada, well, not even some, any pastor that broadcasts in Canada and preaches traditional marriage. In other words, it's interpreted as being a criticism of homosexuality, can be fined, imprisoned, or both. And we're headed in that same direction right now in this country.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We saw it in Houston, Texas just a few months ago, where the mayor and the city council passed an ordinance that if a man wanted to walk, if he just felt like a woman today, he had the right to walk into a woman's bathroom. And if a woman in that bathroom objected, he could sue her for violating his civil rights. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
Absolutely outrageous. I sat in on a school board meeting several years ago in Alaska, where I listened to the school board give this twisted explanation about how they were going to accommodate the children that wanted to act like they were a different sex on a certain day in the public facilities of the school. And to listen to the twisted logic It's like, somebody take a recording of this and just listen to it later. But where are the past? Where is the outrage against this just complete lack of common sense?
Joe, it's even worse than that. Can you imagine the football team at a high school deciding, hey, let's go ahead and shower with the girls today. Let's just feel like girls today and shower in the girls today. I mean, the opportunity for sexual assault and rape and who knows what. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. But you know what happened in Houston? As a result of this, pastors began mobilizing because they wanted to take this to a referendum of the people of Houston. They needed 22,000 signatures. They collected over 50,000 signatures. Well, the mayor was not going to take this laying down. First of all, she said, well, if one signature is incorrect in a sheet, all signatures in that sheet are invalid. Well, I didn't quite get it down enough, so then she came up with another rule. If the person who is taking the signatures is not registered to vote, then all those signatures are invalid. And then when pastors began pushing back, 5 pastors especially that took the leadership, she demanded the sermons of all of those 5 pastors and any emails that referred to her or to the ordinance that she had passed. And all 5 of these pastors very courageously said, we will not comply. When this happened, the very next day, my son called his pastor. And I'll tell you, this is just such an inspirational story because it shows you how God works in the affairs of men. That same day, my son Ted called his pastor at First Baptist Church in Houston and said, Pastor, I want to have a pastor's rally tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I would like to have it at our church to just fight this outrageous decision by this mayor. And the pastor begins to laugh on the other side of the phone. And my son says, well, why are you laughing? He says, Ted, about 3 months ago, about 50 pastors, we decided that we wanted to get together and pray for America, pray for our city, pray for our state. And we have that prayer meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 10 o'clock in my office. And that was just the hand of God. So Ted went to his office at 10 o'clock with those 50 pastors. They all got on their knees and prayed for an hour. And then they went down to the sanctuary and held this rally at 11 o'clock. By that time, about 400 other people had gathered in the sanctuary, just pushing back. And all 50 of those pastors said, if we are asked for our sermons, we will not comply. The city has no right to violate our religious rights. And more and more pastors are going to have to take a stand, and just say, if you want to put me in jail, but I will not prostitute my religious freedom. And you know what? The mayor backed down on her demand of the sermons.
We're seeing that in a number of different contexts, Pastor Cruz. In fact, earlier today we were talking about, and this is a different subject, Common Core. Students walking at a Common Core test. We have other cases where pastors are refusing to comply. We have Pulpit Freedom Sunday, where pastors are standing up, even with threat of IRS action, even though none has actually been applied, and saying, come get us. The federal government will frequently, now you're talking about a local government, but even the federal government many times will back down in the face of principled, deeply held views that are demonstrating basically they're committed to not, basically obeying what they believe to be an unjust law and maintaining their freedom.
Just suppose, Joe, that if these people that are unlawfully being told, you're going to have to shut down your bakery, you're going to have to shut down your flower shop. If they say, no, I will not shut it down, arrest me. You think the government is going to start arresting people left and right in America when their civil rights are being violated? I mean, this is totally lawless. It's unconstitutional. I mean, where is our freedom? Liberty is one of those unalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence. Where is our liberty today?
And we're going to talk more about that after these messages. Stay with us, Pastor Cruz, Father, Senator Ted Cruz, I think I'll call you evangelist, right, for freedom. Keep up the good work on that. On this show, more here in just a few minutes. Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM, The Joe Miller Show. We have coming up next hour Noni Darwish. She was an Egyptian Muslim turned Christian. She's the founder of Arabs for Israel, has a lot of insight on what's going on in the Middle East. Currently we have with us, we're honored to have with us, Rafael Cruz, pastor, father of Senator Ted Cruz, activist going around the country, trying to get pastors to do the right thing, to take a stand for freedom. We're also taking calls, 569-1080. If you're live streaming, area code 907-569-1080. Pastor Cruz has been gracious. He's willing to take those calls. And the first is from Amy. Amy, you're on the Joe Miller Show.
Hi, thank you, Joe. Hey, thank you so much, Joe, first of all, for what you're doing, Restoring Liberty. And thank you for bringing on Reverend Cruz, my dear friend and brother in Christ. I'm so glad to hear your voice. And I just wanted to call and say thank you so much for what you're doing to hold pastors accountable to their oath to the Lord and giving them the resources, the information, and the teaching they need to be bold. And so thank you so much for doing that. And I wanted to also ask you, about, like Joe was saying.
Well, before you do that, Amy, I just want to say I am so happy to be speaking with you. You are an inspiration. I have never met anyone that has such a zeal for the Lord, someone that is just so committed to Christ and to sharing the love of Jesus Christ with everyone, and committed to trying to restore righteousness to America. Thank you for all you do, Amy. You are making a difference in Alaska and beyond. Thank you so very much for your commitment to America and to the kingdom of God.
Thank you, Raphael. That is a huge honor for me to hear that from you. It almost brings me to tears almost for that. But thank you. But I have been so blessed at certainly have been so blessed by your son, Senator Ted Cruz, and the stands he's just been stalwartly and sagaciously taking without fear of anything, but going forward boldly, no matter how impossible it seems. But I've also been impressed with these judges like Judge Roy Moore and the judge there in Texas, I believe he's Andrew Kahanen, I think, who joined with Greg Abbott on, trying to set our laws back right where they are as far as immigration and as far as marriage and these things. And so how do we as the common folks support these folks?
Well, I think what we need to do, first of all, is we need to pray, because these people are under attack. And it is a spiritual battle, what's happening in America, Amy, and you know it very well. We need to pray, but beyond pray, we need to offer them our support. And I think we need to start pushing back against these liberal politicians that want to promote secular humanism. They want to promote things like Common Core, which is destroying the education system in our country, and it is just destroying the Judeo-Christian values that have made America so great. And I think that it is time that teachers begin pushing back and parents begin pushing back. You know, the reason why homeschooling has exploded in America is so many parents are saying, I'm not going to have my children exposed to all this garbage that is being promoted by Common Core. Common Core is a disgrace, and it needs to be totally repealed and just gotten rid of. And you know what? Each state has the authority to say, no, we will handle our education at the state level and even better at the local level, and just push back against Common Core. We cannot just acquiesce to this thing that is destroying not only the educational system, but the moral fiber of America. The foundations that have been made America great are being attacked systematically through Common Core.
And, you know, some of the pushback that we have to do, I mean, there are costs associated with that. I mean, anybody that thinks that they're going to be able to take a stand and not have some recriminations or actually have personal cost is fooling themselves. But you believe, Pastor Cruz, that the fight is so critical at this time that people need to sacrifice, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, Joe, if you look at the last statement in the Declaration of Independence, where those patriots, those framers said, relying upon the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They put it all on the line. You know, Benjamin Franklin said we will either hang separate or we will hang together. And you know, they were willing to put everything on the line. And I'll tell you what, the government can take our lives, the government can take our fortunes, but no one can take our honor. I'll tell you what, we have to stand on our integrity and on doing what is right. And you know, too many patriots have given their lives throughout history to give us the freest country and the greatest country on the face of the earth. And I am not willing to let this progressive destroy what so many Americans gave their lives to give us a heritage for us, our children, and our children's children.
You know, we've got another caller on the line. Amy, I really appreciate you calling in and talking, giving us your thoughts, and also, of course, listening to the Joe Miller Show. Thank you. We have, it looks like, Bill on the line. Mr.
Yes,
Producer,
sir.
if we can.
Bill,
are you there?
Thank you, Raphael, for blessing us with your presence here on the Alaska Airwaves.
Well, hello, Bill. Great to talk to you.
Right. Hey, on the Common Core thing, don't you think the best way to get rid of that is to get rid of the Department of Education on the national level? And
Absolutely, absolutely. You know something? If you look at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Bill, Article 1, Section 8 is called the Enumerated Powers of Congress. There are 18 powers listed in Article 1, Section 8. And you know something? The word education is not there. And actually, it doesn't make any sense to have unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. tell us how to educate our children and grandchildren. That decision needs to be at the local level between parents and teachers and a local school board. I agree with you. The Department of Education is unconstitutional. It's not part of Article 1, Section 8.
Roger that. Good to know.
Bill, thanks.
And,
Appreciate the call, Bill. Keep fighting.
hey, we also like to know how we can help Ted Cruz run for president. Has he actually declared yet?
No, he is thinking very seriously about it. A lot of people around the country are encouraging him to run. I think he will make a decision within the next month or so. I would ask you to pray for him because he's under attack from both sides. And so Please pray for him, and any way that you can just support him, it will be appreciated, and especially he needs your prayers.
Yes, sir, he has them, and he'll have our monetary support when the time comes.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your support.
Thanks, Bill, for the call. You know, Pastor Cruz, one of the things that crossed my mind as we were talking about activism, particularly getting the pastors active and involved, getting Christians in our community active and involved. You know, we're, by most polling data, a Christian nation, at least in name. You know, 70, 80%, even more than that, believe in God, but 70 to 80% identify as Christian. For those that are listening to the show that are not Christians, can you tell them why this activism that you are pushing is important to their freedoms?
Well, it is important because actually the freedoms of every American is under attack. You see, either we have our freedoms protected by the government and our private property protected by the government, or on the opposite level, you have the government taking more and more of our liberties away, which is what is happening today. We see more and more regulations. I mean, even the light bulbs you can put up are regulated. The shape of your toilet seat, everything is regulated, and the more regulations there are, the less freedom we enjoy. And of course, they do it not only through regulation, they do it through taxation. And the more they tax us, the more we have control of the money that we've earned through our sweat and our hard work. And of course, what happens is we become more and more subjects to the government, and the government is trying to enslave us. You know, Ronald Reagan once said, government is not the solution. Government is the problem. And Thomas Jefferson said the Constitution is like chains to bind the mischief of government. Less government is what we need, not more government.
And we'll talk more about that after the break. Pastor Cruz, I'm going to call you an evangelist. I think that's accurate. We also have, of course, the little thing about being the dad of Senator Ted Cruz. More with him in just a few minutes on The Joe Miller Show. Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM, The Joe Miller Show. We have coming up after the top of the hour, Noni Darwish. She was a Muslim from Egypt, turned Christian. She's the founder of Arabs for Israel. We're very honored to have on the line still yet another segment, Pastor Rafael Cruz, traveling around the nation trying to alert pastors to what they need to do to ensure that we can get freedom back in this country. In addition, of course, the dad of Senator Ted Cruz. We just heard that Senator Cruz is considering a presidential run and that he requires our prayers. Now, one of the things we were talking about right before the break, Pastor Cruz, we have lots of listeners out there, some who don't identify as being Christian, and they may say, what does this have to do with me? And when you look at where our rights come from, at least according to what we've been told in our organic documents that started this country, they originate from God. And my view has always been, well, you know, that's kind of a distinctly Christian concept. And if we give that up, if we say that no, rights don't come from God, then pretty much we're telling government that they can take anything away from us, that there's no real natural law restraint on government. What's your view of it?
Well, absolutely. You know, perhaps, you know, if you look at the second paragraph of the Declaration, where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the only thing that makes those rights unalienable is if they come from God. Because if they come from government, as this administration is trying to convince them, then government can take them away. And that's precisely what they have been trying to do. Erode more and more and more of those natural rights that we have enjoyed and our forefathers have enjoyed. And those rights are being stripped away one by one. So every American needs to unite and say, no, we are not going to allow our rights to be taken away. We are not, because what's happening is the government, the more our rights are taken away, the more we become slaves to the government. And the government exercises more and more and more control over our lives. And that's what's happening today.
And increasingly lawless, too. I mean, it amazes me, and we can just look at any of one of three different things that we've heard about over the last several weeks. Obama's illegal amnesty, of course, started longer than 3 weeks ago, but really in the news because of the judge's decision down in Texas and then the failure of the House to prohibit funding for the illegal amnesty. But here's a president that said just 2 short years ago, I can't do this because it's not a monarchy. I can't do this because we're limited by something called the Constitution. And you turn the clock even back further. I don't know whether you saw the video clip from the 2008 presidential run, where he was criticizing Bush for not following the Constitution and was talking about the limits on the federal government. I mean, this man is beyond a hypocrite. But, of course, what he's doing is not different from what we're seeing in other office holders throughout the country as well.
But I'll tell you what, Joe, Obama has taken lawlessness to a new level. This is without a doubt the most lawless administration that we've ever had in the history of this country. This man tramples on the Constitution on a daily basis. He tramples on the rule of law on a daily basis. He tramples on separation of powers. He could care less about the normal procedure to have a bill become law. I mean, he just acts by executive order, by fiat, totally the same manner as a dictator does. And then they come up with excuses saying, well, other presidents have done executive orders, perhaps even more. But I'll tell you what, if you look at the way other presidents have used executive orders, have been more for procedural matters or to clarify points of a bill, not to write law, which is what Obama is doing. He is actually creating laws, taking the role of the legislature, which is totally outside of the executive branch. He is
I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you heard about this or not, but Senator Bernie Sanders last week suggested that the president needs to try to equalize income, and that if he doesn't get the cooperation of the Congress, he should simply increase taxes by $100 billion by executive order. And at a press conference several days ago, Obama's spokesperson was asked specifically about that, and the spokesperson said that the president is actually considering whether or not he can increase taxes by executive order. I mean, this guy sees no limit to what he does.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he has become an imperial president. And as a matter of fact, he has surpassed, the debacle that Jimmy Carter was as a president. I think probably, Jimmy Carter is probably the only guy that is happy that Obama now has usurped the title of the worst president ever.
Well, and especially as far as foreign relations go, I mean, what an absolute disaster the Middle East has come to, and that's a consequence of his lack of leadership, or better yet, his leadership in the wrong direction in the Middle East. And of course, go ahead.
Well, the thing is this, Joe, his idea of peace through appeasement does not work. What has always worked was what Ronald Reagan did, peace through strength. Because Ronald Reagan stood firm, the Soviet Union crumbled without firing one shot. And actually that strength was what actually preserved the peace. Today, this president that we have today is so weak that our enemies are laughing at us. And our allies don't respect us. This man has become a joke.
Well, and that's exactly why we see what Russia's doing, Crimea, Ukraine. It's why Iran continues to push forward. Of course, some have posited, even on this show, that, Obama's really in line with some of the objectives of some of these enemies, which is a terrifying thought. But when you look at, and I know this goes a little outside the scope of our discussion, but when you look at the composition of his advisors, people that are inside the administration, pulling him intentionally in the wrong direction, it's really no surprise that we're where we're at. Now, we've just got about a minute left. What can we do to help you and your efforts across the country? What can we do to help your son?
Well, I think what we need to do, in terms of my son, I asked for, please pray for him, because he is in the lion's den, and the lions are roaring loudly from both sides. Because he's standing on the Constitution, because he's standing on the rule of law, and I'm trying to restore America to a representative constitutional republic. The powers that be, those that are in Washington because they want to be members of the club and they want to preserve the status quo, are against him on both parties. And so what we need is prayer that someone who is a constitutional conservative can take the helms of this country, whether it is him or someone else. We need a representative republic to stand with the leadership of a constitutional conservative. And
well, amen, brother. Pastor Cruz, we got to go. We're at the top of the hour, but blessings on you. We'll pray for your son. Keep up the good work. You're a true patriot. The Joe Miller Show will be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Noni Darwish next.